of you for inviting me here. This is such a fabulous idea, and I'm so looking forward to this chat because, it's a great idea to actually just reintroduce ourselves to everyone in the alumni network. And thank you for taking the initiative to reach out. And, I just want to say that as a proud alumni of IIFT, I'm delighted to obviously be here. I am here in my personal capacity. So I just wanted to, put that little disclaimer up front to say that anything I do say is is a personal point of view and not an organizational one. This is a good question to start off because, to be honest, being from IIFT was an amazing advantage. So if you've seen Mission Impossible, there's a line in there saying that your mission, should you choose to accept it. And for IIFTians, I think the idea is to think international right from the get-go. So it does make it easier when you've had 2 years of really thinking international and then you step into what is fundamentally an international assignment. Having said that, I think there are two clear aspects that you and other alumni might want to keep in mind, just based on my experience. The first bit is the easy one, right? And it's really very intuitive that if you step into a different culture, a different geography, a different tribe, you sort of do a little bit of homework and a research on the harder aspects of what you're doing. So whether it's socio-cultural phenomena, whether it's pop culture, whether it's geopolitical trends, whether, you can't sort of talk football to a hockey-speaking nation or or vice versa and things like that. So those things are very well documented. There are a lot of formalized frameworks, should you choose to go the formal route, to understand the harder aspects of what you need to know before you step into an international assignment. And there are lots of cultural models of marketing as well. But, what really, I think, makes it fun, right, and makes it interesting is the softer EQ aspect of what we learn. And that is something that really has to come from the heart. So if you think about, your individual personality, you need to stay curious. You need to be curious. You need to be open to experimentation and doing things that you've never tried before. And I think that's when the fun really starts, because you start to think a bit like a nomad. And when you think like a nomad, you sort of let yourself be guided by the people in that culture you're like, explain it to me, right? And that happens to us as well. When somebody from an external sort of perspective comes in and says, explain it to me, we're so eager to, show them our views and our perspective and open the doors of our homes and our hearts. And a little bit of what is really bringing in the magic is that. And, in my line of work, we do a lot of consumer connects. And that's what really makes the difference when you actually start looking at, people's houses, the way they live, and they really sort of open up to you. That's really what makes it fun. And then the other part is also very interesting, because we don't do that until you're actually in that situation, which is you need to give back as well. Right? So just as you're open to experiences, people are also eager to learn about what you can contribute. And I still remember this American colleague of mine. She'd been to an Indian sort of detox camp or something, some kind of cleansing camp. She came and she was like, oh, I learned this amazing sort of beauty food called khichdi. And I was like, okay, so I can certainly tell you a couple of things about that, because there's so many recipes and there's so many things so I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's more fun when it's a two-way conversation and we have a lot to contribute as well as to learn. And I think, the softer aspects is really, I would say, make or break. I think there are two parts to this, right? So the first thing is that there is a change and a flexibility that happens, and there's an evolution of marketing, and I'll talk about that. But before I do, I want to say that there is a lot in consumer science which does remain the same. And every time you talk about change, you also need to reflect on what are the sort of unchanged fundamentals. Right? So if you think about human evolution, we sort of came into being maybe in the Pleistocene era or something 300 odd thousand years ago. And there is a lot of evolutionary biology which is hardwired into our brains, right? And those things don't change, within a span of few hundred years. So what doesn't change is the way you respond to visuals, the way you respond to. So if you've read Daniel Kahneman, he talks about this fast and slow thinking. He talks about system 1 and system 2. And there's this, if you've read Blink, you talk about instinctive, instinctive responses. So there's a lot in that space that doesn't change. And even today, when you think about a human being going into the store, it's one of the most visually complex environments that you can put a human being in. So a lot of that stuff, whether it's neuroscience or how the brain works, or, the power of emotionality, the power of building meaningfulness, connections, emotion, all of that doesn't change. The power of needing cultural and temporal relevance does not change. Having said that, there is a sea change in how those things are delivered. So I will quote one of my bosses, actually, the head of insights for Unilever. He's a person called Vijay Raj. And he says data-driven marketing is still marketing, right? So you need the fundamentals, and then you need to figure out how data can drive that element of marketing. So I would like to echo that and say that, there's a lot in marketing which is changing. And in my opinion, it's changing for the better. So if you look at the Cannes Awards winners for this year, you see a clear, sort of emphasis on purpose-driven marketing, which is good because that's what consumers are expecting and that's what companies are responding to. So there's a lot of purpose-driven marketing. There's a lot of sustainability initiatives. There's a lot of sustainable packaging, which is now happening. And these are all amazingly positive moves in the direction that marketing is evolving in. The other thing that I would say marketing is really progressing well on is this whole thing about diversity and inclusion and really sort of bringing in different perspectives. And I'll talk about, many of you would have seen the Dove campaign for real beauty and celebrating real, authentic beauty, right? And sort of that was one of the pioneers in that space. And then there's some really good work recently on differently abled people, communities which have been ignored thus far in mainstream marketing. And, the fact that if you are in a wheelchair, that shouldn't stop you from, being sporty and all of that good stuff. So that's again, a really, really positive move that's happening in marketing. And that's I guess, a natural evolution, and one that I'm really proud of. From a research perspective, I think there's a lot more evidence than we had, a few years back. So there's a lot of evidence-based marketing, and of course, big data makes that a lot easier. So it's, it's easier to sort of have attribution models, for example, which talk about, the degree of impact certain things have had. It's much easier to talk about campaign evaluations than it was, and because it's moving more and more towards evidence-based marketing. That's again a really good, I think, step change in terms of marketing. And of course, technology is everywhere, so there's hyper-personalization and the rest of it. But I think those were the 4 or 5 things which are really sort of positive trends in the evolution of marketing, and they'll just keep accelerating, hopefully. So there are 2 parts to it. Let me answer the first bit first. Which is really around AI and ML. And I think, while post-pandemic is a great example of how, such tools have helped companies pivot fast and show agility. I think the roots of the experimentation started way before that as well, right? And the utility has only been increasing. So, there is industry. I think there was a recent survey done which said that, look, it's increasingly becoming a differentiator in marketing in terms of how well you use AI, how well you use ML. But before getting into the marketing question, I also want to say that AI and ML, I think, work best, and that's where it'll go next. It'll work best when, it's an organization-wide or an enterprise-wide view, because it works best when, you start having a single unified view of data. That sits within the organization, whether it's supply chain, whether it's R&D, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales. So all of that sort of harmonized together is when it works beautifully. And I think people are sort of on a journey towards that enterprise-ish big data model. In terms of where it's being used now extensively, I think there's a lot of industry use cases in terms of AI and ML automating routine tasks. And and they're increasingly picking up speed on those. So for example, if you think of voice enabled chatbots, right, and if you call a call center, it's very unlikely that you'll actually get to speak to a human on the first try. You'll actually speak to the chatbot and give them your details, and then you'll somehow sort of graduate. And sometimes it's a frustrating experience if it's not done right, but then equally that's where it comes in pretty handy. So automation of routine tasks does help efficiency. That's where it's used. From a research perspective, it's I think it's used across the research spectrum. So it's used to identify consumer needs, identify demand spaces, identify segments, analyze social listening, understand, trawl through reams of data and try to get to some nuggets. Screening, identification of opportunities. I think all of that is fair play when it comes to AI and ML, and it's making huge strides in all of those as well. I think the other place where it's really sort of picking up speed is personalization and hyper-personalized content, because increasingly as segment sizes become smaller and smaller, you're essentially talking about hyper-personalization at scale, and you need an AI backbone to be able to do that. So those are three places I think it's really doing well in terms of, I guess, audience segmentation, just demographic definitions and things like that. So those are the 4 or 5 areas where there are lots and lots of industry use cases, and it's really picking up. The other part of the question is, you asked what's next, and I think there's a lot of there's some super interesting industry piloting in this space, but I think AI has not yet been able to crack true creation. So you still need to guide and learn through a variety of things, and what it does best right now is probably work in sync with what you already know. But I think there are lots of interesting pilots where they're trying to get AIs to, let's say, write body copy, right? Or create ads, or create music tracks, or create soundtracks. And, all of those are really interesting applications, which I think are kind of in the pilot stage, but those will be an interesting ones to watch out for in terms of hyper-personalized experiences. So I think the key thing that IFT has done professionally for me, and that's something for all of you to, I guess, consider to keep it, whether you want to keep it in mind. It's very good to actually be in a position where you're thinking international from the get-go. I think one of the things that I have always believed in, and this was the reason I joined IFT in the first place, was because of that tag international business, right? I believed that business is international in nature, and it'll become more international in nature as things progress. And I think that's a huge differentiator for you as people, because you are thinking in a different way right from the get-go. What it does to you professionally, I think, again, it's like that whole Mission Impossible challenge, right? Should you choose to take it, I think it forces you to challenge your own thinking, challenge your own perspective, and it forces you to think really, really big. Right. So, so if you're sort of thinking of an IFT student, you would almost expect them to have read something like a Sapiens kind of a book, which talks about, a really big picture view of the world and the evolution of people within it. You would expect them to, read something like a Prisoners of Geography, which is really an interesting take on geopolitics, because that's what you would expect from a student of international business, right? So I think, what it does to you professionally is it forces you to think big. It forces you to think international. It forces you to, think about cultural nuances. And these are things which come in really handy when you are sort of thinking of an international career to start with. The other thing that it does, and obviously, like any institute, it builds relationships, right? It builds an amazing network and an amazing family. And that's exactly, why all of us are here today. But I think what thinking big fundamentally does is it also gives you a lot of confidence, right? And it manifests itself in extremely unpredictable ways, right? So I kind of thought I had, studied and sort of moved on into different assignments and stuff. But even now, the other day I was reading this paper on, international cosmetic regulations, because I'm obviously in the industry and I needed to understand a couple of things. And, it's just so easy, because you understand the trade frameworks and you understand how transfer pricing might work and things like that. So it just gives you that. I think it's a little bit of unquantifiable confidence, but you really need to take the international bit of the international business really seriously. And I think your next question was really interesting, which is, what advice can I give? And it's always good to give advice. I don't know if it's useful advice, but here goes, right? And a lot of I think people can learn from you guys in terms of how you've dealt with it, right? And how you've come out better and stronger. So the one thing that I would say, which is, I think, a serious piece of advice is, while people in traditional courses would, if it was not this COVID thing, they would be focusing only on their studies. I think the one thing that you can do is think about how you can use your business skills to help someone. And the reason I'm saying that is that you're part of an economy and part of the COVID timing, which needs your skills, right? And this is amazing experience to be able to go out there, use your business skills to help someone. It's great for you as an individual. It's great for you as a professional. It's great for you to have a conversation with a company to say, I helped this small business go online, or I helped, my local kirana to do XYZ, or I helped reskill somebody who was affected by COVID. And these are all great examples of how you can actually show your business leadership in a time of, volatility. So I would say, the first thing that you need to do is to almost put in your head, what is the one experience that you want, which is a social experience, where you can go out and get out there and do something and use your skill. And that will give you a confidence which, no amount of theoretical learning can give you. I think that's my first advice. The second thing that I think you should do is, again, I keep coming back to this, think about the big picture, right? And that's really what differentiates us as part of this institute. And the other thing is, it's also a good time, I guess, to think about your own strengths, because you have probably far more choices than we did. So, the kind of sector you want to go into, the kind of entrepreneurial spirit you want to do, or what do you want to do like 10, 15 years down the line. So those are the advice. I don't know if it's helpful, but that's kind of my thinking.
I'll start off with the first question. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I'd say don't study so much, just kind of talk to people, build networks. I think I overdid the studying bit because I kind of was very Marx oriented. So I think it's really about building relationships, also about building a lot of reflection, what your strengths are, where do you want to go, what do you want to do.
Ma'am, the next question is, what are your favorite spots on the campus?
So that's an easy one, because what we used to love to do is get out there at 2:00 at night and have Maggie at Tanku. And we used to love, the monastery next door. It used to do amazing cakes and amazing sort of bakes as well. So I seem to be sort of going overboard on the eating. Hang on. And then, of course, there was the whole top of the world thing. But what I love most is, I guess, the midnight walks and, just chatting and knowing that you have the rest of the evening free, because after this time in your life, it never ever happens. You are always doing something or the other.
Ma'am, and then the third question, what are your favorite 3 activities that you like doing when you have your time off?
So I have a 10-year-old, so it's hard to get a lot of time off. Frankly speaking, it's I paint a lot. I love doing that. I read a lot. I guess I'm in the beauty business, so I keep sort of surfing a lot of this Instagram and Pinterest and which new brand is coming up and stuff. So I do a lot of that. I actually do enjoy it. Those 3 would be the top.
The next question, what was your most cherished achievement of your time at IFK?
Being on the merit list. And it was amazing because it was a very hot contested position, and And I went in saying that, okay, if I want to really walk out with being on the merit list, it's like it'll be like a big deal for me, and I really want to walk out with a dream job and a merit list. And I think the merit list was and of course I did get a dream job. I did get through it, so that was my lovely experience.
Ma'am, the next question: if you could eat only one food item for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think if it's only one item, I think it'll have to be dal chawal, simply because that's the one thing which I think everybody sort of homes in on at some point of time. You cannot spend your life eating, all the fancy stuff. So I think it'll have to be dal chawal.
The next question: what's the favorite part of your current job?
I think it's looking at the dynamism of both the beauty business as well as the digital marketing space. And I think the confluence of the two is phenomenal because there's so much happening in there all the time. I think the fun part of my job is that I actually look at things from a consumer perspective. So I get to meet consumers all over the world. And then I kind of see, where the trends that are emerging, the brands that are emerging, the kind of digital action that's happening, and it's super exciting. I think, like I said, I do it on my off time as well because I'm really passionate about that space. I love it.
The next question: what are the 2 things at the top of your bucket list?
Holiday to Morocco. So I think everybody's got this one exotic destination which always seems to elude them, and I think that's my sort of big thing. Actually, it's a toss, Morocco or Hawaii. Both of them seem sort of slightly out of reach right now. And then the other thing is when I finally have to sort of finish off, looking after my son's studies, because I'm constantly nagging him that I want to go for a proper spa holiday because I think I deserve it after chasing him for so many years. So that's like a big bucket list, but it has to wait until I have to stop. I can safely say that I've stopped supervising my son's studies, and he's actually studying, and that'll be like a big deal when he actually says I'm studying. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but yeah.
Okay, ma'am, the last question: what would you have missed in life had you not been an IFTN?
Big picture thinking, and I keep coming back to that, but I really do think it has added a lot of value to my life. I fell in love with IFT because of that ethos, that this is how business needs to be understood, needs to be internalized, and I believe that that's what's got me my job. I think this is what has helped me through my career, and I genuinely believe it will help you through yours as well.